The courthouse towered over the city like a giant made of stone and glass. People passing by hardly noticed its cold beauty anymore. It had become a place of dread, where lives were decided in silence, where truth was often buried under piles of money and lies. Inside, in a small wooden bench meant for the accused, sat Aryan Malik. His once proud shoulders were slumped, his face pale from sleepless nights. His blue suit, carefully chosen months ago when he believed justice would save him, was now wrinkled and tired, just like him. Aryan had once been a man everyone admired. A hard-working entrepreneur, a kind neighbor, a loving father. But now the city whispered his name with disgust. They called him a thief. They called him a liar. Some even called him dangerous. But Aryan knew the truth. He was innocent. The only problem, no one cared. Aryan's thoughts drifted as he sat waiting for the judge to arrive. He remembered the day his nightmare began. It was supposed to be a celebration, the launch of his new business. His partners, people he had trusted for years, smiled and clapped him on the back. But only days later, those same partners accused him of embezzling funds. They painted him as the villain who had destroyed the company's reputation. And just like that, the media believed them. His name, once shining with respect, became a curse. Worst of all, the betrayal cut deeper because Aryan realized why they had done it: money. His partners had framed him to hide their own crimes. But no one would listen. At night, when despair threatened to crush him, there was only one thing that kept him alive: his daughter, Alicia. 7 years old, with eyes full of innocence, she was the only one who still believed in him. Every night, as she curled into his arms, she whispered the same question. "Papa, you're telling the truth, right? You didn't do what they say." And Aryan, even with tears streaming down his face, always managed to whisper back, "Yes, my angel, your papa never lied to you. I did nothing wrong." Her tiny hands on his face, her trust shining through her tears, those moments gave him strength. Now, as the sound of footsteps echoed and the judge entered the courtroom, Aryan's chest tightened. The judge, a stern man with cold eyes, sat at the high bench and scanned the room. Lawyers shuffled their papers, reporters adjusted their cameras, policemen stood tall. But Aryan sat alone. His last lawyer had quit the night before, bribed by the enemy. Aryan had begged him to stay, but money spoke louder than justice. Now there was no one left to defend him. The judge's gavel struck sharply. "The court is in session. Case number 276, Aryan Malik versus the state." A hush fell over the room. The prosecutor, a slick man in a dark suit, rose confidently. His voice was sharp, dripping with authority. "Your Honor, the evidence against the accused is overwhelming. Not only has he defrauded his investors, but he has also betrayed the trust of this city. We demand the maximum punishment." Gasps rippled through the audience. Reporters scribbled notes eagerly. Aryan wanted to speak, to scream that it was all lies, but his throat tightened. Without a lawyer, without support, what chance did he have? The judge turned toward him. "Mr. Malik, do you have a lawyer to represent you today?" Aryan's lips trembled. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Finally, in a broken whisper, he said, "No, Your Honor." The judge frowned, his patience already thin. "Then this case will proceed without defense. The verdict will be based on the prosecution's evidence." Arian's heart shattered. It was over. Suddenly, the heavy courtroom doors burst open with a loud creak. All heads turned. Tiny footsteps echoed on the marble floor. A little girl, dressed in an oversized black gown, clutching a thick brown file to her chest, marched into the courtroom. Gasps filled the air. It was Alicia. Her small face was red from running, her braids bouncing, her eyes fierce with determination. She didn't stop, didn't hesitate. She walked straight up to the front, climbed onto the stool, and stood before the microphone. She slammed the file onto the table, lifted her chin, and with all her courage shouted, "I can defend him." The entire courtroom froze. For a long moment, no one moved. The judge's hand froze mid-air. The prosecutor's mouth hung open. Even the policeman at the back straightened in disbelief. A child had just declared herself the defender of the accused. The reporters were the first to react. Camera shutters clicked, pens scratched furiously against notepads. This was a story too unusual, too dramatic to ignore. The judge cleared his throat. His voice, usually sharp, now trembled slightly with confusion. "Young lady, who are you?" The little girl puffed out her chest, trying to look taller than her tiny frame allowed. "I am Alicia Malik," she said proudly. "And he," she pointed at Arian, her small finger trembling yet determined, "is my papa." A murmur rippled across the room. Arian's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to run to her, to shield her from the stares, from the ridicule, from the cold cruelty of the courtroom. But his body felt frozen, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Alicia," he whispered, barely audible. The judge adjusted his glasses, trying to regain control. "Miss Malik, this is a court of law, not a stage for children's games. You cannot represent your father here. Do you even know what that means?" Alicia didn't flinch. She clutched the thick file in her arms and replied, "Yes, Your Honor. It means I stand up for him because no one else will. It means I speak the truth when others speak lies." Her voice echoed across the silent hall, and for the first time in weeks, Arian felt a flicker of pride rise inside his hollow chest. The prosecutor smirked, seizing the moment to belittle her. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A child cannot be allowed to interfere in judicial proceedings. This is not a school play." He turned toward Alicia, his eyes cold. "Little girl, this is a serious matter. Do you even know what your father has done?" Alicia's brows furrowed, her small hands shook, but her voice was clear. "Yes, he told me stories every night, he made me pancakes when I was sick, and he never lied to me, not even once. That's what he has done. He is my hero. And heroes don't steal. Heroes don't cheat." The crowd gasped again. The prosecutor's smile faltered. For a second, even he seemed thrown off by the purity in her words. The judge leaned forward. His stern mask was cracking. "Child, where did you get that file?" Alicia carefully opened the brown file she carried. Inside were papers, scribbled notes, colorful drawings, diary entries. She pulled one out, her handwriting uneven and childish. "This is my diary," she announced. "Every day I wrote about Papa. About how he helped our neighbors, how he worked all night to build his company, how he promised me he would always do the right thing." She looked around the courtroom, her big eyes filling with tears but her voice growing louder. "If he is guilty, then I don't believe in goodness anymore. If he is guilty, then maybe there are no honest people left in the world." But I know the truth. My papa is not guilty." Her voice cracked, but the strength behind it shook the courtroom more than any lawyer's polished speech ever could. Arian's eyes burned with tears. He had spent months drowning in hopelessness, months believing the world would never hear his side. And now, here stood his daughter, his little warrior, fighting for him with nothing but love and truth. "Alicia," he whispered again, his voice trembling. The judge exhaled deeply, his gavel resting untouched. He was a man of law, bound by rules. Yet, in that moment, he felt the weight of something greater: innocence, faith, and the desperate cry of a child refusing to let her father be crushed. The audience in the courtroom shifted uneasily. Some wiped their eyes. Even one of the policemen at the back cleared his throat, trying to hide the emotion on his face. The prosecutor tried to recover, his tone sharper now. "Your Honor, this is a distraction. The accused is facing charges backed by financial records, documents, and testimonies. We cannot allow childish emotions to derail justice." Alicia turned to him, her small fists clenched. "Justice? You call this justice? When people lie and pay money to hide the truth? When good men are punished because they don't have money to fight back? That's not justice. That's cheating." The words sliced through the silence like a blade. For once, the prosecutor had no reply. Arian felt his body shake with silent sobs. He lowered his head, ashamed that his daughter had to fight for him, proud that she had the courage to do what he could not. At that moment, he realized something. He wasn't just a father being defended by his daughter. He was a man being saved by the purest form of truth. And the world was finally forced to listen. The silence in the courtroom was so heavy it felt like the air itself had thickened. Every pair of eyes, lawyers, policemen, journalists, strangers, was fixed on the little girl who dared to speak where adults had failed. Alicia, barely tall enough to reach the microphone, flipped through her file with trembling fingers. The pages fluttered, covered in colorful drawings, uneven words, and smudges where tears had fallen during lonely nights. She held one page up high. "This is me and Papa," she said, pointing at a crayon sketch. Two stick figures held hands under a crooked sun. One figure was tall, labeled Papa. The other was small, labeled Me. Beside them, in big shaky letters, it read, "Papa is my hero." The courtroom gasped again. Some smiled faintly. Others blinked away tears they didn't expect to feel in such a place. Alicia continued, her voice growing steadier. "Every night when Papa came home, even if he was tired, he told me stories. Not stories about princesses or dragons. Stories about being good, about helping people, about never stealing, never lying. He said, 'Alicia, if you want to shine, you must be honest, because truth is the brightest light.'" Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "How can the man who taught me that be a thief? How can the man who always told me to choose the right path be standing here accused of crimes he never did?" Arian's heart broke and healed in the same moment. Shame for dragging her into this cruel world. Pride for the courage she showed. Love that burned so fiercely it brought him back from the edge of despair. He wanted to rise, to hold her, but the bailiff motioned for him to stay seated. All Arian could do was watch as his daughter carried the weight of his honor on her tiny shoulders. The prosecutor finally snapped out of his shock. His voice dripped with condescension. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. A child's diary cannot be considered evidence. The court must dismiss this performance immediately. Alicia turned to him, her braids swinging. Her small face hardened in a way no 7-year-olds should. "You are scared, aren't you?" she accused boldly. The prosecutor froze, his smirk faltering. "You are scared because you know the truth. You know Papa didn't do it. You are scared because people will listen to me, even if they don't listen to him." The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters leaned forward eagerly. The judge banged his gavel for order, but even he could not hide the way his eyes lingered on Alicia, full of conflict. Alicia opened another paper, this one filled with shaky handwriting. "Here," she said, "I wrote this on the night Papa came home late. He was so tired, but he still helped me with my homework. He said, even when the world is unfair, you must not give up on what is right. That night I promised myself I would never give up on him." Her voice trembled but rose again. "If the court won't believe him, then believe me. I am his proof. My Papa is not guilty. My Papa is good. My Papa is mine." For the first time, Arian noticed tears glistening in the judge's eyes. The old man cleared his throat, pretending to adjust his glasses. The journalists' pens moved like lightning. Headlines were already forming in their minds. "Child defends father in court. A story of love against injustice." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, sensing control slipping from his hands. He whispered urgently to his assistant, who fumbled through files, desperate to regain momentum. But in that moment, it was no longer about legal arguments or piles of forged evidence. It was about a little girl's unshakable belief. It was about truth spoken not with law books but with love. And the entire room, judge, jury, and strangers, felt the shift. Arian closed his eyes, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. He whispered softly, a prayer carried only to himself. "Thank you, my angel. You are stronger than I ever was." The judge finally spoke, his voice softer than before. "Child, Alicia, is it? You understand this is not how courtrooms usually work. Your words are heartfelt, but this court must rely on evidence, not feelings." Alicia nodded firmly, her small chin lifting with pride. "I know, Your Honor. That's why I brought this." She reached into her oversized gown pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. Her tiny hands trembled as she held it up. It was a picture of her father, sitting at a school desk, surrounded by children. He was smiling, teaching them how to paint. The walls were decorated with charts and drawings, the free art class Arian had started for the neighborhood kids years ago. "This is my Papa," she said loudly. "He gave free classes to children who couldn't pay. He bought them books with his own money. If he was greedy, would he do that? If he was bad, would he care about them?" The photograph passed from the bailiff to the judge. The old man studied it for a long time. The image, raw and pure, spoke louder than documents forged in backrooms. Arian sat frozen, memories flooding back. He remembered those evenings, when he would rush home from work only to spend hours teaching children who had nothing. Their laughter, their excitement, it was the one thing that made him feel his life had meaning. And now, his daughter was using that very piece of his heart as his shield. His lips trembled. "Alicia," he whispered again, but the words drowned in the storm of emotion inside him. The prosecutor slammed his table, desperate. "Your Honor, none of this is relevant. Photographs, diaries, Childish drawings. This is sentiment, not law. The accused embezzled millions. That is what we are here for. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked the confidence it once carried. The audience no longer looked at him as the voice of truth. Instead, their eyes followed Alicia, the tiny lawyer with a heart too big for her age. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Prosecutor, this court is aware of procedure. But perhaps you should allow the child to finish before dismissing her." The prosecutor clenched his jaw, frustrated. He sat down heavily, glaring at Alicia with thinly veiled contempt. But Alicia only straightened her back, as if his glare could never touch her. She opened another page from her diary. This one had more writing, less drawings. She began to read aloud, her childish voice echoing in the grand hall. "Papa worked all night again today. He looked so tired, but when I asked him if he was okay, he smiled. He said, 'Alicia, when you do good things, sometimes people will try to hurt you. But you must not be afraid, because the truth will always protect you.'" Her small hands trembled, but her eyes stayed fixed on the judge. "Papa told me that the truth always wins. But today, I think the truth needs help. That's why I'm here." The words hit the room like a wave. The journalists, who had come looking for a scandal, were now wiping their eyes discreetly. Even one of the stern policemen shifted uncomfortably, his hand brushing across his face as if to hide moisture in his eyes. Arian's chest ached. For months he had believed he was drowning alone, unseen, unheard. Yet here was proof that every word he had ever spoken to his daughter had taken root in her heart. She had remembered everything, and she was turning those memories into weapons stronger than any lawyer's arguments. The judge rubbed his forehead. He was a man of rules, a servant of law, but at that moment, he felt something stir in him, something deeper than legal codes. He saw not a case file, but a family. Not just an accused, but a father whose worth was reflected in the tears and determination of his child. "Proceed, Alicia," he said quietly. She turned to the crowd now, her small voice rising with unexpected power. "You all think my papa is a criminal because that's what people with money told you. But I know the truth. I know him. And if you send him away, you're not just punishing him, you're punishing me. You're taking away the only person I have in the whole world." Her voice cracked, and this time tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "Please, don't take my papa." The courtroom was no longer silent. It was heavy with sniffles, gasps, and the quiet rustle of people wiping their eyes. Arian bowed his head, tears rolling freely. He felt something he hadn't felt in so long: hope. The courtroom buzzed with whispers after Alicia's tearful plea. The judge struck his gavel to restore order, but even the loud cracks of wood against wood could not erase the emotions hanging thick in the air. Arian sat with his hands clasped tightly together, his knuckles white. He could barely breathe. Never in his life had he felt so powerless, yet so deeply moved. His daughter, barely taller than the courtroom table, was doing what he had been too broken to attempt: fighting back. Flashback. The promise. Arian's mind drifted to a memory, years ago, in their tiny apartment. Alicia had scraped her knee while playing. Tears ran down her cheeks as she sat on the kitchen floor. "Papa, it hurts," she sobbed. Arian knelt beside her, gently cleaning the wound. "I know, my angel. But listen, pain doesn't mean you stop. It means you are learning how strong you are. Alicia sniffled. But what if I can't be strong? He kissed her forehead. Then I will be strong for you. And one day, you will be strong for me. The memory faded, but the truth of it burned in his heart. That, one day, had come sooner than he ever imagined. Back in the courtroom, Alicia wiped her tears with the sleeve of her oversized gown and took a deep breath. She opened another page from her diary. This one I wrote after Papa gave me my birthday gift, she explained. She read aloud, her voice shaky but clear. Papa didn't have much money that year. I know because Mama told me. But he still bought me a book of fairy tales. He said, stories are treasures that never run out. I hugged him so tight because I knew he gave me everything he had just to make me smile. Her eyes lifted, sharp with determination. Would a man who steals from others sacrifice everything just to give his daughter one book? No, my papa is not guilty. The prosecutor slammed his hand on the table again. Enough of this sentimental nonsense. Your Honor, we cannot let this circus continue. The accused must face the evidence, not the emotions of a child. The judge raised his hand, silencing him. Mr. Prosecutor, the court has heard your side for months. Today, it seems only fair we also hear what the defense, or what remains of it, has to say. Continue, Alicia. A stunned silence followed. Even Arian's breath caught. The judge had just given permission, against all norms, for his daughter to continue defending him. The evidence of love. Alicia pulled out a folded newspaper clipping from her file. The ink was smudged, but the headline was clear. Local businessman saves family from fire. She handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. This is about my papa, she said proudly. Last year, when a fire broke out in our neighbor's house, Papa ran inside. He pulled out 2 children before the firefighters arrived. He almost got burned himself. If Papa cared only about money, why would he risk his life for people who had nothing to give him? The judge studied the clipping, his expression unreadable. But the jury exchanged glances, their stiff faces softening. The prosecutor fidgeted nervously, flipping through his own files. Arian's eyes blurred with tears. That night replayed in his head. The choking smoke, the terrified screams, the way his legs shook after dragging those children out. He hadn't thought anyone remembered. But Alicia had. She remembered everything. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking silently. The turning point. Alicia looked around the courtroom, her voice trembling but growing louder with each word. Everyone says my papa is a criminal because they see papers and signatures. But papers can lie. People can lie. My papa never lied to me. He never lied to anyone. I may be small, but I know the truth. And the truth is standing right here in front of you. She stepped away from the table and walked toward her father. The bailiff moved, then hesitated, allowing her through. She placed her tiny hand on Arian's arm. Papa is not a number on a paper. He is not the lies people tell. He is my papa, and if you take him away, you are not just punishing him, you are punishing me. Please, please don't do this. The courtroom erupted again. Some wept openly. Some clapped before quickly silencing themselves. Reporters scribbled as if history itself was unfolding before their eyes. Even the judge lowered his gaze, hiding the storm of emotions in his eyes. Arian looked up, his face streaked with tears. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to hope, really hope, that maybe, just maybe, the truth had a chance. The judge's gavel struck once more, though softer this time, as if he too hesitated to break the spell that Alicia's words had cast. "This court will recess for 10 minutes, he declared, his voice shaking slightly. "We will resume shortly." The bailiff announced the break, and the courtroom erupted in whispers, chairs scraping, people rushing to speak into phones, no doubt carrying the story beyond these walls. But Arian did not hear any of it. His world had narrowed to the tiny figure standing before him. Alicia, his daughter, his savior, his warrior, a father's gratitude. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as though the world might snatch her away if he let go. His tears wet her hair, but he didn't care. "Why, Alicia, why would you put yourself through this?" His voice cracked, heavy with love and guilt. She leaned back just enough to look at him, her little hands cupping his tired face. "Because you're my papa. Because you never gave up on me." "How could I give up on you?" Arian's heart twisted painfully. "You're just a child. You shouldn't have to carry this burden." "But I'm your child," she whispered fiercely. "And if the world is unfair to you, then it's unfair to me too. Papa, you told me once that the truth always needs someone brave enough to speak it. Today, that someone had to be me." Arian closed his eyes, his body shaking. He had always thought he was her protector. But now, in this moment, she was his. Flashback. The empty chair. The image of an empty chair at their dinner table suddenly flashed in his mind. It had been his worst nightmare since this trial began, that Alicia would sit alone, her small hands folded neatly, waiting for a father who would never return home. Now, seeing her courage, he realized she had been just as afraid of that empty chair as he was. She wasn't fighting only for his freedom. She was fighting for her family, for her home, for the life she refused to lose. The prosecutor's last attempt. The recess ended, and everyone returned. But the air was different now, thicker, charged with an energy that hadn't existed before. The prosecutor stood, but his earlier arrogance was gone. He shuffled his papers nervously, his voice lacking conviction. "Your Honor, with respect, this display, however touching, cannot erase the evidence presented." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Evidence, Mr. Prosecutor, or manipulation? Because so far, it seems the only person showing genuine truth here is a child." The courtroom gasped. The prosecutor paled, his words dying on his tongue. Alicia held her father's hand tightly under the table, squeezing it as if to say, "Hold on, Papa. Just a little longer." The judge's reflection. The judge leaned back in his chair, his old eyes scanning the room. He saw hardened lawyers, journalists hungry for scandal, citizens who had come to witness a man's downfall. But none of them had spoken with the honesty of a child. None of them had risked everything to protect someone they loved. And deep in his heart, the judge knew, truth sometimes came not from documents or witnesses, but from love too pure to be faked. Arian's silent vow. As the proceedings dragged on into closing remarks, Arian stayed silent. He did not rise to argue. He did not beg for mercy. Instead, he made a vow in his heart. If he walked free, it would not be for himself. It would be for Alicia. For every tear she shed, for every word she spoke, for every ounce of courage she carried in her tiny frame. He would live not just as her father, but as the man worthy of the faith she had shown in him. And if fate decided otherwise, if prison doors swallowed him whole, then he would carry her voice with him, burning brighter than the sun inside his broken soul. The closing moment. The judge finally rose. "This court will reconvene tomorrow for its decision," he announced, banging the gavel once more. Gasps filled the room. People had hoped for an immediate judgment. But Arian understood. The judge needed time. Perhaps he, too, was shaken in ways he could not yet admit. The bailiffs moved to escort Arian back into custody. Alicia clung to him desperately, tears flooding her eyes. "Papa, don't be scared," she whispered. "Tomorrow, the truth will win. I know it will." He knelt down, chains clinking at his wrists, and kissed her forehead. "Even if the world forgets me, Alicia, I will never forget this day. You are my truth. You are my victory." The bailiffs pulled him away, but his eyes never left hers until the heavy doors shut between them. End stories.